The To Die For Daily Podcast is brought to you by R is for Revenge Dress, written by Kinsey Schofield and published by Post Hill Press. R is for Revenge Dress explores the celebrated life of Princess Diana through the alphabet, hitting bookshelves November of 2022. Pre-order R is for Revenge Dress at Amazon or Barnes & Noble today.
Love the British monarchy? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the To Die For Daily Podcast with Kinsey Schofield. Take it away, Kinsey.
It's so hard to try to be professional because I really like you. You're like really my friend. So it's so hard for me to be like, hey, and thanks for talking to the To Die For Daily Podcast.
Well, I always find like when you start to because it's weird, you kind of go in these like professional, real around, and then when you start to become friends, you're like, oh, now we have to be professional again.
Kids, I know. Okay, all right. Well, I am with author Gareth Russell. You not only have the Queen Mother coming out. I cannot wait to get the Queen Mother. Everybody's talking about it on Instagram. That's how we became friends. But Young and Damned and Fair. First of all, how did you come up with that title? I like how I'm just jumping into it, but I love the title, Young and Damned and Fair. Tell me how you came up with that title. I was lucky to discover it on audiobook.
With Jenny Funnell, who narrates it, who's so good. She's just brilliant. So Young and Damned and Fair, which is my biography of Henry VIII's wife, Catherine Howard, was the book that kind of started my career in America. It's how I got my agent in America. I had done my dissertation on Catherine's household staff, but when my agent Brittany and I were talking about maybe turning it into a book, we decided to go for a more lyrical title. And there's a poem by Stevie Smith that talks about sort of a mythical woman trapped on a rock, young and damned and fair, and that's where I pitched it.
Brilliant. Okay, so for people not familiar with you, you are a historian, a broadcaster, a very good Instagram follow.
Stop.
You're making me blush. So we found each other on Instagram. I loved your content. I work with a couple of American broadcasting companies, and they asked me for references for really good royal commentators during the Jubilee. I threw your name out there, but I didn't anticipate to walk into a green room and see you because you had a really busy schedule during Jubilee, and we sat there for half an hour, had a blast. It was the most fun, and I wanted to just do a quick Jubilee recap with a friend that I actually got to spend part of the Jubilee with, which is you. So tell me, the environment was amazing, right? Can you explain a little bit about how the city was?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think we need to acknowledge the MVP, which apart from Prince Louis was your hat. I remember when you walked around the corner in the green room, I was like, oh, she has come to play. It was so good. Look, you're absolutely right. It was this environment in the city was really upbeat and exciting. And it sounds strange because we were in the green room, with other correspondents and commentators. And there was a vibe even there. You felt, obviously it's a really impressive moment, 70 years of service to the country, but also, 2-3 years of things being difficult and locked away. And, so it was sort of this symbiosis between the theme, the celebration of the Jubilee, and also people seeing each other again. I find the pageantry and everything to do with it really uplifting.
Oh, absolutely. Also, this is my first go round in London as a royal commentator. And so to be in a room with Dickie Arbiter was next level. During the mass, Dickie is standing with his hands on a chair 3 inches from the television watching Prince Harry and Meghan Markle enter, and he's like, oh, come on, smile. And it is, to me, it's crazy because this is a man that has been in the same room with Prince Harry. He's been in, strategy meetings with the Queen. This is a man who is so entrenched in really this not only the pageantry, not only the protocol, but the deep family ties. He knows it all. So that was really interesting to me to witness him witnessing some of the Jubilee.
You'll know this as well. I mean, he was really close to Diana.
Yeah.
He saw a lot of Diana. So it was, and he tells these really funny stories about her. And I think it's strange, I suppose, if you're like us and you're sort of coming up and you're doing the royal commentary. You've seen Dickie Arbiter many times on TV. You know what he's done, and it was just a generally surreal day, in a really good way. I think there was a slightly strange moment where I think I was getting my makeup done or something. Not that it isn't just a natural glow, but I was getting my makeup done, and you could see on the screens that they had in the green room the flyby, and then you heard it go right over our hotel where we were shooting. So there was a buzz, there was a real excitement to it. Although I didn't tell you because I didn't want to like stress out any of our the colleagues at the network, but I was initially due on at 11:40, and I got to the hotel at 11:39 because everything, the traffic, everything. When I had dropped my earphone down the side of the car, had reached down, cut my finger, and kind of bled on my shirt. I looked like I turned up cosplaying like a hemophiliac Romanov. Like that looked like the vibe I was going for. But luckily, I think things were running a little late for everyone that day, so I got in, and that was good. But I definitely left at I definitely horcruxed between Heathrow and the studio. Like 11:39 was worrying.
Well, that's what I was going to say to you. I felt like even though I was not in the mobs of people that we saw with their Union Jacks, I was not in those mobs because the traffic was so bad and so many streets were closed off that they would send a car for me an hour or 2 hours before it was time for me to do a hit. And so no matter what I planned to see, I didn't get to see anything because I was in a car navigating. But I had the craziest, I shouldn't say that. I had the most eccentric taxi driver one time, okay? And he had so many Diana stories. He met Diana one time when he was in the hospital. She sat there and talked to him for 20 minutes. I love hearing those stories because sometimes we hear these Diana stories over and over again, and it's like, is she really this martyr, you know? And so to hear a stranger say, I met her at the hospital, she stood there and talked to me for 20 minutes, she was the most sincere person ever. I'm really resentful of the current royal family because I was so touched by her compassion and generosity. That was really interesting to me. Did he go into a few conspiracy theories? Perhaps he did. We won't go into that, but it was really... It's so interesting to meet people that actually met her, have nothing to gain from the story, and talk about how really wonderful this woman is.
Well, first of all, I mean, it's interesting. I was going to ask you about conspiracy theories because I feel like it's a rite of passage in London to have a taxi driver tell you a conspiracy theory. It's luck of the draw. It's really luck of the draw which one you get. I think it's really interesting. I mean, you mentioned my book on the Queen Mother. I interviewed a lot of people who knew her, and there is something special, I think, about people who knew the person, who saw the person, because you're seeing someone like Diana, who is sort of still kind of imprisoned in the fame we now project onto her. There is a sense, as you say, of someone frozen in martyrdom who's not a real person. And then when you hear these stories of people who are really touched by the time she took to talk to them, I think it's really moving. And it's also, I think, for anyone, I mean, like you've worked on a book on Diana. I think if you're doing anything like this, to hear a first-hand source of someone who had a special moment with them is really, really special.
Yeah. And especially when it's not someone like, oh, am I going to do this right now? Paul Burrell, who always has... No, and I will say for the record, I would love to talk to Paul, but Paul has created an entire brand on that relationship. So when you talk to him, you wonder, is this to sell a book or is this to get the next thing? And I might fix this and edit. I don't know. I might remove this. But
that made me laugh. I think he liked a few of my posts actually, which I thought was quite nice of him. But I've never met him. But there are people who it's a really tough line to walk because you can get a reputation of someone who is a talker, and that's not always the best thing. I will say I was kind of lucky that season 4 of The Crown was so anti the Queen Mother and so hostile to her, because it meant that a lot of people who knew her, who usually would not have spoken to someone, because they're a more discreet generation, I think,
Yeah.
but they were very willing to talk.
Yeah, because they had to defend their friend.
That's it. And I did speak to people who were not fans and were very critical, but there is something. And some of them were sort of in the middle, and they just met her a few times. But what was really, there was something special about talking to the friends, I think. There was just something about, because quite a few of them were a little bit more elderly, and it felt like they were sort of reminiscing with you, which was very special.
All right, talk to me about The Crown, because that's one of my biggest issues. Whenever I do American media, they say, well, on The Crown, this happened. And you don't want to correct a person on live television and say, that is not authentic. That is not true to what happened. That is great entertainment. I especially think, aside from the Queen Mother, I think that they make the Queen look really negative and nasty. And I don't appreciate that. And I don't think it's true. Can you give me your thoughts on that?
I mean, look, I should say that I've had friends who were in it, so I'm always a little bit hesitant.
But no, I love it. I'll watch it forever. I'll watch it on repeat. But I don't like the idea that people think there is truth. There's so much truth to it. There's just a little truth.
I think you're absolutely right. This is where you sort of can't have the proverbial cake and eat it too. You cannot say we are allowed to get away with massive inaccuracies because we're a drama, but then, as quite a few people with The Crown do, trumpet the accuracy and the research. You can't do both, because that's blurring those lines. And I think, for me, seasons 1 and season 2 were extraordinary. I mean, really, really brilliant. And to give credit to those earlier seasons, I think part of that is that was a period drama. That was so long ago that, with the exception of the Queen and Prince Philip, nearly everyone they were dramatizing had passed away. The closer in time you get to the present, the more difficult it becomes. And, whatever you think sort of the breakdown of the Prince and Princess of Wales's marriage, I felt Charles in season 3 and Charles in season 4 were two completely different people. Different people.
I was in love with season 3 Charles.
Yeah,
I was in love with him.
So sensitive and so kind of heartfelt and lost. And then season 4, he was a monster. I mean,
and no justification as to what that shift.
No, there was nothing. There was nothing really done with that at all. I thought they did really well. They did, there have been things that they have done that Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think we're supposed to assume he's just bitter that he can't be with Camilla. I think we're supposed to assume that. But there's also not enough engagement between the two of them.
No, there wasn't, and I loved the portrayal of Camilla. I thought actually they didn't go down the line of demonizing the other woman. I thought that was really sensitively handled. There have just been some questionable decisions. I was horrified by obviously because I've worked on a book about her. I was really horrified by the episode about the Queen Mother's nieces, and I go into that in the book and say, look, this is what actually happened. And when you're getting into the area of misrepresenting how people with physical and mental disabilities were treated at that time, then to sensationalize it for the sake of a royal drama, to me, you're maybe treading into pretty dangerous moral ground there. Mm-hmm. I get frustrated when people say all you need to do is watch The Crown. It is an extraordinary production. It really, really is. I'm really excited to see Elizabeth Debicki as Princess Diana. I think what great casting. But if I'm honest, I'm interested to hear what you think and what your listeners and viewers think as well, because I bounce back and forth in this. There are certain shows, The Loudest Voice, Bombshell, they kind of stick in my head about modern things. I just was not sure this was the time to tell the story. It felt a little too fresh.
Right. And so with Charles and Diana, you think that's when...
I think we have to bear in mind, and maybe they won't watch it, but I try to bear in mind that she has two sons who are still alive, and clearly in their own ways have, obviously as she would, struggled to deal with what happened. I think to be getting that close and depicting her death and the breakdown of their marriage. I just don't know. But then again, I understand.
I know, yeah.
I'm like you. I'm torn because
Yeah.
there have been moments in The Crown where I have felt, oh, I really think you could have done this in a different way. I had a big issue with the scene in season 2 where Philip is shown in a nightmare clambering through the corpses of his dead relatives in the airplane. I just thought, not a need for this. These are, whatever your views on the monarchy are, these are human beings. And
And Prince Philip, I believe he was alive when that came out.
Yeah, he was.
No, that is, oh, I just got goosebumps thinking about that. That's not something that I would want to experience in my lifetime.
No, and look, I mean, you can tell from my accent, I'm from Northern Ireland. I did have problems with the way the Northern Irish Troubles were presented. It really bothered me. That it was, it is still part of the United Kingdom. It was a civil war that went on for 30 years. It got about 10 minutes coverage in The Crown.
Yeah.
And there was a lot more spent on Diana's shoes than there was on the Troubles. Like that.
Well, literally her wrapped around a toilet, which was my biggest issue, but yes.
I have to say, as someone who, I'm very aware of eating disorders, and I find the depiction of it, for me, went over the edge. I just think it was too much.
That
too
and
often.
Spencer, between The Crown and Spencer, I was so spent. I was so done. This is not a woman that lived her life and 16 years. She didn't live 16 years wrapped around a toilet. I don't like that. That's the way that this modern age has decided that they're going to represent her.
It's interesting because, obviously between us, you're the Diana expert. So I'm interested to hear what you think, which is, a lot of people said, oh, she's so, they're so anti-Charles and pro-Diana in season 4. But I actually thought the Diana of season 4 came across as really stupid. She did, I thought they really downplayed a lot of what Diana did.
Oh my gosh.
A lot Diana really, really went out to bat, as did Princess Margaret, I should say. But at the height of the AIDS crisis, the two of them really were being seen sitting next to people with AIDS and hugging people with AIDS. That was a revolutionary act of kindness that both of them did. And I felt I felt everything was shrunk to the marriage.
Yeah.
And I thought you could have gotten this across and maybe fleshed out Diana a bit, all of them a bit more. It's so strange.
I can't believe how much we love The Crown. We should say we love The Crown.
I do. I actually think, my favorite season was the first season.
For sure.
And I think Claire Foy's performance will go down as one of the greats in TV history. I really do. Yeah. I think, and where I will give credit where credit is due, there were topics in season 3 and 4 that were so vast that, of course, they had to shrink them down. I personally, just as a viewer, wonder about shows that get really close to the date in real life. That's just something I don't envy the writers, because obviously they are contractually bound to finish this, and I think it will be difficult for them. I have heard, I'm sure you have as well, that Netflix have picked up the prequel options, so they're going to, I think, go back to Edward VII. I think we will see, if it's the same writer and the same team doing the prequel, I think we're going to see some absolutely extraordinary television. I really do.
I totally agree. As I was watching 1 and 2 with you, I absolutely loved the first 2 seasons, and it killed me that we didn't go back to Wallace and Edward. I thought, wow, how do you skip over these 2 fascinating creatures who, now it's so much more interesting to look at them and to look at their story, because there are, no matter what anybody wants to say, parallels between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and Wallace and Edward. In the way that... Oh, go ahead.
I will. Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted, but I will take a plaudit, because in 2014, in an interview, I was asked who I thought the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate, was basing herself on, and I said the Queen Mother. And in the last, I think, a few weeks, people who worked for her and worked for the Queen Mother have said they are very similar.
Ah, that's really interesting.
Well, because the Queen Mother she was Duchess of York first, and she was someone who, I think, like the Duchess of Cambridge, plays a long game. She's very aware that if you're in the monarchy, this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. I mean, the Queen Mother she's a less stellar reputation today, but the Queen Mother from 1923 to 2002 was pretty consistently one of the most popular people in the country.
And fashionable. Like, everybody loved what she wore. Like, she was really this icon.
She was, I mean, there's the photograph, and it's interesting because what happened with her has happened with all the women who've married into the Windsor dynasty, which is they're popular for the first 5 to 10 years, and then a younger prince marries another woman, and then they're characterized as being jealous of her. And that's what happened with Elizabeth and Wallace. It happened with Diana and Sarah Ferguson. People forget that. There's always this cycle of like the woman has to be pitted against the other woman, which is
right.
a bit
unnecessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just reminded me of something. Back to the green room.
Sure.
We're waiting to go on, and
I had that fear you have before you film. I always have this thing where they put out so much food in the green rooms. And you're like, I'm really hungry, but I just know today is the day that it's going to get stuck in my teeth. Like, I know that I've made my
That
teeth.
is a really. That's why I carry those little floss picks in my bag. So
Smart.
you should carry like the kind that in the plastic in your wallet. But well, also when you're running around like that to do commentary, you don't eat, so you have to stop and eat. I know what you're saying, but you have to eat something because it'll be 6 or 7 o'clock and you realize that you've been up since 4 a.m. and you haven't had anything to eat and you're about to pass out.
I was at a dinner for like a friend was hosting a dinner that night, and when I arrived and sat at the table, I realized that I was going to have to remember that civilization has rules, and I could not eat the way I wanted to. It was just all of a sudden like this sort of Viking warlord appetite settled right over me. So I had to be really, really, and it's true, you do forget, you do just constantly forget to eat.
Going, and it was just like you said, this magical atmosphere. So you are just going with the flow, and just it felt so great. Well, we had we worked with Piers Morgan together during the Jubilee. I like him. I like anybody that has the courage to say what they think. But we were pretty intimidated by the thought of not knowing what questions were coming. Because, some people provide questions before. We had no idea. Now, one thing we suspected you might be asked because of your background is what the Queen Mother would think of Harry and Meghan. I'd like 2 answers from you. 1, what you told me that day, and 2, how would the Queen Mother have responded to the way that Harry and Meghan did act? Because I thought they did a pretty decent job.
That's right. I really did. I think so. To answer in order, I think the Queen Mother really was someone who there was an Edwardian concept of duty. It did not matter how unhappy you were. And really, in many ways, Harry is leading a kind of rebellion against the values of the Queen Mother that still exist at the heart of the royal family, which is, it was the Queen Mother who coined that very famous phrase, never explain, never complain. And that is how she did not give interviews. She really resented giving interviews. But one of the things I found out from my book, which blew my mind, is that there was a journalist at the time, I think, of Prince Harry's christening, who chanced his arm and put the microphone in front of the Queen Mother and asked, what advice would you give to your great-grandsons? And the Queen Mother said something like, oh, I never give advice, which was a polite way of saying, go away. Mm-hmm. And he if you were. And she said something like, I'm paraphrasing here, it's in the book, but she said something like, always put your country first.
Yeah.
That was the advice. And, I think we're all, we maybe a lot of us will have had grandparents or great-grandparents who lived through the years of the war. They were built differently to us. That's just the nature of it. So I think she would never have understood a member of the royal family wanting to live abroad. Mm-mm. That just is not something that would have sat with her. That's not to say that she was right and Harry's wrong or vice versa. It's just there's can't usually speculate, but with Elizabeth's views on things like that, there's no doubt that she would not have thought that was the right thing to do. And in fact, she did at one point get a whisper that Prince Charles was considering going to live in Italy. because in the early 90s, because he was really struggling with how much the press was sort of, with he was very unpopular at that point. And
So this is early 90s. Is this still with Diana? Because the divorce, there was the separation and divorce.
Separations happened, and he was considering going to live in Tuscany for most of the year. And the Queen Mother she never really spoke about Wallace and Edward. And she invited Charles to dinner, and she all of a sudden just started talking about his great uncle and his great aunt. And the way she phrased it, it became very clear to Charles that she was telling him, do not leave this country. The Queen Mother never went in a straight line. She she wove in her point. And in regards what she would have thought of how the Sussexes behaved at the Jubilee, I don't think there was anything to criticize with them in regards to the behavior of the Jubilee. I think if you are someone who, it's the same thing with the Cambridges. I think if you're someone who is, in fact, many famous people, if you're someone who's already decided you don't like them, you'll find something there.
Yeah.
But I think if you're trying to be fair, they turned up. They did not. In fact, no member of the royal family, I thought, tried to pull focus. Everything was, directed towards the Queen. The Platinum Jubilee, I thought they behaved. I thought all of them behaved immaculately, and I thought there was keenness of spirit about the criticism. There's also of them for the Jubilee, and there's also something else that just drives me nuts, and it's something that happens with famous people all the time. People will see a single photograph or footage from afar, and they will start to extrapolate psychological reasons. This is what this person's thinking. This is what they're doing. You think they might just have had stubbed their toe. You don't know what's, you don't know what's happening.
We don't know. They might have lost their babysitter as they were walking in. It's just, you're exactly right.
Exactly. And I thought, it's not the most important point, but I loved the Duchess of Sussex's ensemble.
Yeah,
the white.
Was very.
I really thought that.
Classy, and while she looked beautiful, she was not trying to get a million articles about what she wore from top to bottom. You could tell she just wanted to look respectful.
I thought so, and I thought the same thing of the Countess of Wessex and the Duchess of Cambridge. I thought they all sort of. I just thought the whole thing was a very well executed and well acted celebration.
I mean, have we ever seen something? I mean, I should say, I think it's probably so surprising because of the plague, the pandemic, but to see something unfolded so effortlessly looking. I mean, it did not seem like there were any mistakes, from mic issues to somebody showing up late that we knew of. It seemed like everything unfolded so gracefully, and that just tells you the power of the men in gray suits.
They've been doing this for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of back catalogue. The only time I have ever really felt a member of the royal family has tried to pull focus from the Queen was Prince Andrew at Prince Philip's memorial. I thought for him to have allowed himself to be included was yet another act of just gargantuan selfishness.
Yeah.
And I thought if there was any decency, that he would have excused himself, because it did become about him. That's what his father's memorial became about him. And I think, you've heard it as well, the pretty good sources that we both have, that Prince Charles and Prince William are the ones who vetoed him being anywhere near the Jubilee. I think that was 100% the right decision to make.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of Prince Andrew, and I hadn't planned to ask you this, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I have read so many accounts that the Spencer family really thought that Diana would end up with Andrew. I also, Prince Andrew coming up, he was this, this hero. He was handsome. And he did, when they were younger, they played together. So Do you ever think, wow, how life could have been different, and would it have been so it couldn't have been so chaotic had she married Andrew, right? Because I don't think that the world would have been so obsessed with her. It was the idea, perhaps, that she was going to be queen. I don't know. Is this conversation dumb?
No, it's interesting. I always think of what if is interesting. I've heard that about. I mean, I've heard that Diana and Andrew got on really well, and also it was a time just before the rumors about how the stories about Andrew that started years and years and years ago were how awful he was to people who worked for the royal family. Like he was really kind of that was the first kind of the rumblings about his the truth of his personality. But before that, you're right. I mean, he served in the Falklands War. He was positioned as the fun prince, and Prince Charles was the more serious one. It's interesting. I've certainly heard that that's who the Spencers thought she would end up with. But he seems to have been linked to a lot more people than Charles was, if that makes sense. There was a lot of rumors kind of flying around at the time, so it's very hard to pinpoint whether.
And it also feels like he was going for more exotic women. I mean, I think he dated somebody that was in what could be considered a soft core adult film.
Yeah, he definitely went.
Diana was a virgin.
Diana's, I mean, the thing you have to keep in mind, and the Crown, again, sort of not to play it up, but the Crown plays her as this great outsider. She was an earl's daughter.
Yeah.
Who had a family lineage going back to Charles II and a house the size of a palace.
I think her maybe it's just her grandma and grandpa rented Park House on the Sandringham estate. She would stumble upon the Queen. I mean, she really was not an outsider. I was wondering that. Why, what is that up with that narrative? Is it more exciting to think of her as a commoner?
I mean, she's presented that way. I mean, she is now presented as sort of the great outsider, when in fact her and the Queen Mother came from identical backgrounds. They were both the daughters of earls, and the Queen Mother had actually been very good friends with both of Diana's great aunts, were her two best friends as a debutante. So that she had, the family ties went back a really, really long way. So then I suppose maybe if we're talking about how close she was to certain parts of the royal family, maybe it's just because she had grown up knowing Andrew. Maybe that's where the rumors.
Yeah, I think that that's such an interesting idea, because she was such a powerful character. And like you said, so much smarter than she's given credit for, especially in The Crown. That's one of my biggest issues with Spencer. This idea that she was Kristen Stewart is unraveling on the last holiday she spends with the British royal family, when we actually know that she was in cubbies on the phone with Andrew Morton in secret, getting ready, plotting this huge power PR move. I mean, this was a smart, intelligent, creative human being. And I wonder, such a powerful creature, such an intelligent creature, I feel like she could have, and Fergie would hate me saying this, but I feel like she could have put Prince Andrew in his place. I'm so interested by this idea that, there were whispers and kind of nudges for her to end up with Prince Andrew initially, but also is that maybe her sister that dated Prince Charles saying, well, if I'm not good enough for Prince Charles, you certainly aren't either.
But there were rumors also that Charles was. I mean, there were a couple of rumors that he was going to end up with a European princess. That it was going to be that he was going to end up with Princess Marie Astrid of Luxembourg. Wow. There was going to be an old school royal marriage, but she was Catholic, and at the time they had to marry Protestants. So it's such an interesting what if.
It is. And that's so interesting to me that you just said that, because so much has changed in such a short amount in our lifetimes. Yeah. Well, not really. I wasn't born when they originally got married, but so much has changed in the sense that, Prince Harry, got to marry a biracial, divorced American actress. I mean, that would have never happened for Prince Charles. Prince Charles was, lovingly encouraging in that direction.
Well, as you say, the divorce thing is it conjures up what had been a huge problem for Edward VIII and Wallace. I mean, it's notorious. And certainly, I mean, actually, I would argue that 40, 50 years ago, Kate Middleton wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
She's not the child of an aristocrat. Right. So and they were, I mean, right up until 50s or 60s. They were really, and for the heirs to the throne, they did want aristocratic or women. That it's just remarkable what has changed.
So can you give me any sort of details about your book? Can you give me the skinny? When can we look forward to getting it? And
Do Let's Have Another Drink, which I shamelessly used as an excuse to have 479 over Jubilee weekend. Every time it was, well, actually, my friend Archie, he runs this brilliant Instagram called Cocktails of... Do you want me to start that again? Did it ping?
No, I think that's exciting. We're going to pretend it's Archie.
Okay, great. Yeah. My friend Archie has this Instagram called Cocktails of Lockdown, and he puts together sort of vintage cocktail recipes. So I was galloping through all 77 decades. Delicious, good times. But so the book is called Do Let's Have Another Drink, which was what the Queen Mother used to say to get people, to sort of, don't go to your meeting, don't leave lunch, do let's have another drink. And it's 101 anecdotes about her life, one for each year, told by people who knew her. And it is out in Britain and Ireland with HarperCollins in October, and with Simon and Schuster in the US and Canada in November. So I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed writing this book. It was so much fun.
What was your favorite part of Jubilee, even if you didn't see it for your own eyes, even if you were with friends somewhere else?
I mean, I have to say Prince Louis. I mean, really, because I'm an eldest of four. And me and my sisters were messaging the youngest saying, you have Prince Louis has the strongest youngest child energy I've ever seen. I also have to say, I loved, there was such a sense of relaxation and celebration. I think the atmosphere, I really loved the atmosphere, I have to say. And
when did you go home?
I went home on the Wednesday, so I stayed. I had my friend Michelle's concert on the Monday.
Wait, I just have to interrupt the podcast for 1 minute here. Gareth is talking about Michelle Dockery, that is Lady Mary from Downton Abbey, who's now in a band called Michael and Michelle. I am deceased! How cool is that?
Are you a creature of duty?
And then I had a few working lunches on the Tuesday. So it was...
I wish you would have invited me to that concert, except it was sold out.
It was sold out. So
it was so good. I watched some of it on your Instagram, and it took me on a whole rabbit hole.
It's really annoying because she's so talented.
Yeah.
But I am sort of really kind of ENFJ type A. It's a burden. And the minute she told me, I bought tickets, and then the space, obviously, everywhere, there's limits. And all of a sudden, about 3 days before, every friend was trying to get the last ticket.
Yeah.
So it was just, I don't know, it was really, I get so much out of seeing my friends do something they love. I mean, it really is just so special to see it.
Enjoying talking to you right now because I love watching you do what you love. But I have a question really quickly, because I felt like on Sunday night we fell asleep on a high. Wow, what a great experience. Yeah. The Jubilee is amazing. And then I woke up Monday morning and it was we gotta get Boris Johnson out of here. And I was whoa, can we not just whoa.
Do you know what I will say though? I was at breakfast with friends and we were laughing about, usually with the Jubilee, there's a 2-week post-glow. Yeah. You have to be really unpopular for someone to come after you, 12 hours after the Jubilee's over. It was back to earth with a bump. But then it's a bit like her Jubilee in 1977, less like the ones in 2002, 2012. This is a much more in common with the Silver Jubilee in 1977, in that it's a tough time. It's happening in a tough time. But yes, even I did not expect the Monday headlines to be an inter-Tory party coup.
It was so funny. I was like, wow, this London is super fun. This is so great.
Do you know what's interesting though? I was talking to a friend who is not really a massive monarchist, but he said there's something about not seeing political headlines every day that feels like a bit of a mental hiatus.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I was, I was talking to my fiance about that today over text message because we have breaking news. Oh, what?
He's so fun. He was so much fun in the green room. Really funny.
Oh my gosh, Gareth. If it wasn't him, it would be you. But
Oh well, why I hate him.
but so we were talking today about just the chaos, the chaos of the headlines here, and he was like, if it weren't for our family issues, like we would 100% live in London because it's just I get what you say. Like, politics becomes so overwhelming and it can consume you, and I'm 100% with you. It was the most effortlessly, like, just I just felt like I was floating. It was just the energy was so street parties everywhere. People were in such a good mood.
I have to say there was something about seeing the street parties that felt really special, particularly as I've said after for a lot of people, particularly a couple of elderly people I was talking with, and they had said, really I've spent the last 2 years cooped up. And it meant a lot. It meant a lot to people. So that, I think, was something very, very lovely about the whole experience. And as you say, there was a floating vibe because I think it was flowing. I think how they organized everything was flowed with such precision.
Right. And I met an elderly couple at a coffee shop, and they said something very similar, that they were just so excited to be out and about and just enjoying the environment. And they were so sweet. Oh my gosh, they were so cute. But well, I'm going to let you go. I've had just one other question that has completely escaped my brain.
I wondered because as you were starting to slow down, I was like, "That's what I do when the question goes on." I'm like, "Just take your time. You'll remember what you were saying."
Are we the same person? But I'll probably remember it as soon as we get off. But it was I've had so much fun talking to you, and I had so much fun. I'm glad. Well, first of all, it's fun to have people my age that love the royal family, because one of my least favorite questions, and I was going to ask it to you, I kept thinking I got to ask it to him because I hate this question. Why do you love the British royal family? And it's so fun to find people that love them too, but why is it, for me, it's the history and the tradition.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up. Both my grandmother, my family are nearly all monarchists, and so I grew up. My late grandmother grew up during the war, and so for her, the king and queen were, absolutely sacrosanct. So I sort of grew up hearing stories, but I suppose part of it is the history. I was a history nerd from, about 7 really onwards, and I just devoured every book that I could find. And I think when you spend so much time loving the topic, you become more interested in the people. And I think I do admire people who stick to their duty and stick to the course, if that's the right word.
Right.
So I think for me, I think to me that was admirable, but it was fascinating, just fascinating.
Absolutely. I think, that discipline is really remarkable. I remembered my question. Okay. Not that I wasn't listening. That was a very good answer, and I completely concur. So what I wanted to ask you, this is like such a tacky question. I can't believe I'm bringing it back. But to me, one of my favorite parts of Jubilee too were the window displays throughout town. Yes. How cute were those?
I love those. I love a splash of color. I have to say, I love a good window display. On a techie note, one of my favorite memories was I was on right before you, and I got out the earpiece in, and we were out in the balcony next to the House of Parliament. And one of the gentlemen who worked in the tech department said, "Hey Gareth, is the light too bright?" And I went, yeah, a little. He went, "I'm sorry." I was like, "Oh."
You and I both were like this the entire interview.
It was, I have to share the screenshot at some point, but I look as if I can't read my own teleprompter. There was no teleprompter. It was just that the sun had just so bright. It took up residence in my corneas. You were coming out right after me. I thought, I'm going to have to warn her, but there's nothing that...
We should have had sunglasses.
Believe me, I considered it. And I had to weigh up what's worse, being the person who squints or being the person who looks maybe hungover.
Wait, did you also have a 10-second delay in your ear? Because I did, and I felt so uncomfortable.
No, I didn't have the delay, but my earpiece popped out at one stage.
Well, no, that's okay, because then you get to do the Nancy Grace.
Yeah. Actually, maybe there was a bit of a delay because I think, yes, towards the end there was.
Yeah.
It started to build in. So that's always a bit of a panic because you don't want to you don't want to answer the questions in the wrong order. Yeah, it was, but it was, I have to say, the green room, the filming, everything that day, there was I think even with all of us in there was a good sense of camaraderie.
Oh, it was so much fun. And I'm so glad that I met you in person. And like I said before, I just feel like you're one of my favorite people now. And I'm just so glad that we actually met in real life because online, people are interesting online. And I feel like you always see people as their best on social media. But I don't. This isn't my space, Gareth. We've moved on, okay? But to meet you in real life, I loved you so much more, and I was like, no, I really want to spend time with this person. I want to, we're going to be friends forever. So to have that meeting with you was really exciting to me, and I'm so happy that I got to share my Jubilee with you.
Oh, well, and also thank you just so much for for putting me forward for that because it was a really fun job to do, and it sort of fitted in perfectly. I had things later on, but it was a great start because I got to meet you. I got to meet that really fun team. I don't know. I felt very lucky in my job that day.
Absolutely.
That's how I felt.
Oh my God, I had so much fun talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the To Die For Daily Podcast with Kinsey Schofield. A transcript of this chat is available at todiefordaily.com. Please subscribe to hear more from your favourite royal commentators. Cheers.